There are three things that darkness cannot contain: the moon, the stars, and the truth. All three will find their way through the darkness. Truth will often pierce its way through in unexpected ways, at unexpected times, and sometimes through unexpected people. Hello, my name is Lenora Howze, and you're listening to Secrets of the cHURTched, Revealed to Heal. Hello, my friends, and welcome. Whether you are a new listener or you have been following this podcast since it began in March, I am so glad that you have decided to join me on my journey to truth. And if you are embarking upon your own journey, I pray that something you've heard from me or one of my guests will help you arrive at your destination safely to your truth. You know, it's been a while since we have focused on my personal journey. Between my sister Jody's passing in May, the time I needed for my own healing, and then coming back and sharing Jody's amazing story for the last 2 episodes, well, it's been nearly 2 months since we've continued with my story. So I thought it might be fitting to do a brief recap. Because if you've been listening, you know that this story, my story, has more drama and more unexpected twists and turns than most blockbuster suspense movies you may have ever seen. Who knows? One day this too might be a movie. So stay tuned. Secrets of the cHURTched just might be coming to a theater or a streaming service near you. And one more thing. New episodes of this podcast can be heard every other week for now, and anywhere you find and listen to your favorite podcast, including Spotify and Apple iTunes. So on the off weeks, that'll give you a chance to catch up on episodes you may have missed or replay ones that you did listen to but just needed to go back and get a refresher. This is a lot of information. So with that said, let's do a brief recap and get you all caught up. I was 12 years old when I announced to my parents, John and Betty Howze, that I knew I was adopted. I literally just knew. And for the next 18 years, I would find myself wondering who I came from, who I was, what was my true identity, and was there anyone else out there who was biologically connected to me, whose blood I shared? I would be nearly 30 years old before my questions were answered. And after what can only be described as divine providence and the orchestrated guidance of the Lord's hand in my life, in January 1989, I showed up unannounced at my birth mother's job to meet this woman who had given birth to me 30 years earlier. And it would be that day that would mark the beginning of not only my journey to truth, but also the day that my birth mother, Marion, would be forced to face her own truth. You see, I was not only her secret, I was her pastor's secret, I was the church secret, and no one, and I mean no one, ever expected this secret, me, to be unearthed. Once I was separated from my birth parents and placed for adoption at the hospital where I was born, I'm pretty certain that this pastor and his church secretary thought that their secret was safe and would be concealed forever. But as I say in my open every week, darkness cannot hide secrets. Oh, they may stay hidden for a while and possibly even, say, 30 years. But one day, the light of truth will pierce through the darkness and uncover that which we think was buried and hidden in our past. Especially if that secret happens to be a whole human being. And more so, if that secret, that human being, is the key to setting generations of people free. So here we are, January 16th, 1989, the day that destiny overcame deception, light overcame darkness, and the Master's scalpel of truth began its spiritual dissection to make me free. Free from what, you might ask? Oh, you'll find that out soon enough. As I've mentioned before, the weeks and months that followed after meeting my birth mother were almost like the early stages of dating. We had so many questions of each other, from what we like to eat, where we may have traveled, where we went to school, even talked about the relationships that we had been in or were currently in. And interestingly enough, Marion, who had worked so hard to conceal the biggest secret of her life, held nothing back from me. It was as if she had finally found someone to tell her whole truth to. She told me about her mother, my grandmother, and how she was known as the baby stealer because she would steal babies from people, women in the family that she thought weren't fit or able to raise them. So it made me wonder why she didn't steal me. But I'm glad she didn't. I think I turned out just fine. Marion told me about her marriage, her husband, and how he didn't even know that she'd given birth to a daughter before they were married. In fact, according to Marion, he didn't even know she had been with another man before him. She told me about my brothers, all three of them, all younger than me. I didn't have any younger brothers in my Howze family, so this was really exciting to me. I couldn't wait to have the opportunity to meet them. I didn't know if I ever would. She told me how one of my brothers was in the army and at the time stationed in Germany, how one of them was an aspiring musician, and how my youngest brother was an award-winning bodybuilder. They all sounded so fascinating. She shared lots of stories and pictures, even a picture of my father, an old black and white picture of him when he was much younger. I would have that picture for another 30 years before I realized that it was taken at Marion's wedding. Yes, her wedding to the man she was still married to. Her wedding that was held at the church she attended at the time. Her wedding that was officiated by her pastor, my father. Just a tiny detail she somehow left out when she gave me the picture. But much more on that later, and how I learned where this picture had been taken. We'll talk about that in an upcoming episode. Be patient, my friends. You'll hear all about that and much more very soon. I remember staring at this picture of her, my father, studying it, trying to detect even a minor physical resemblance. Well, he had chocolate skin, like me, and a wide, toothy smile, also like me. But outside of those physical traits, I really didn't see much of a resemblance to Herb. Because now you have to remember, I look so much like Marion, I don't think there was enough genetic matter left to look like anyone else. It wouldn't be until I met Herb, the day I showed up, unannounced again, that's sort of my MO, I guess, at the church he pastored in Florida 7 years after I met Marion, or until I met 6 of his other 10 children 30 years after meeting Marion. It wouldn't be until then that I discover just how much like my birth father I actually was. You'll hear all about that too very soon. But for nearly 11 months, these stories and pictures were all I had to introduce me to my new, or should I say, my original family. Although Marion came face to face with her church secret that day she met me, she wasn't really ready to let anyone else know that I was now in her life. And I was okay with that. I really meant it when I told her that I didn't want to disrupt her life and that I really wasn't looking for a family. I had one. I was very satisfied, fulfilled, and loved by my Howze family. and that it was her choice if and when she wanted to tell her husband of over 20 years, her sons, or her brothers and sisters of this secret she had kept for decades. Or better said, the secret that kept her. She wrestled for several months about how to tell them, when to tell them. But to her credit, there was never a question about whether she would tell them. She was committed to telling all of them about me and to have them meet me. And so in November of that same year, 1989, she did just that. And let's just say that it didn't go over very well with everyone, specifically not with her husband. But listen, I got it then and I get it now. So just think about it. One day, a day that probably began just like any other day, your spouse or significant other comes home and tells you that 30 years ago, they had a child that they hadn't seen since her birth, since the day she was born at the hospital, and that a few months before, said child walked onto their job and into their life. Now talk about a bombshell. I don't know of anyone who would have taken that news well, so I got it. But I commend Marion for having the courage to tell him. Now, did she tell him who my father was? That he was the pastor of their church, the same pastor that married them? Oh, I don't think so. That, I think, would have been too much for anyone to handle. In fact, if my memory serves me correctly, and I am admittedly a little fuzzy about this, but when I asked Marion if she had told her husband who my father was, she said that she told him it was someone he didn't know. That's what I remember. But since all parties involved are now deceased, there's no way for me to confirm exactly what she told him or what he may have even known. All I do know is that he wasn't happy about me. And quite frankly, I don't blame him. But in the end, it was all good. And he and I developed a great relationship. I guess I kind of grew on him. So how did it go with meeting the rest of the family, both Marion and mine? Well, I'm glad you asked. It was a two-parter, starting with Thanksgiving Day, 1989. It would be the first big holiday since my mother, Betty Howze, died in August of that same year. And we were determined to continue our tradition of the Howze family holiday dinner. And although I never told my mother that I had met Marion for reasons I've discussed in earlier episodes, I did tell my father, John Howze, shortly after she died. Now, I want to stop just for a minute and for a side note, just to give you a brief tutorial, because when I say my mother or my father, I'm referring to the Howzes. They were the ones who raised me practically from birth and were the only parents I knew. When I say my birth mother or biological mother, I'm referring to Marion. You got it. And when I say my birth father or my biological father, I'm referring to who? Herb. I hear you out there. Quick learners. Now, in order to protect the privacy and identity of Herb and Marion's families and their other children, I don't give their last names. The only last name you'll hear me call is my own, Howze. Okay? Everyone straight now? I know it's a lot to keep straight, and there are a lot of people, many of whom I haven't even introduced into this story yet. There's a lot more of this journey to go. So sit back and relax and just enjoy this ride. Buckle up, though. There will be some sudden and dramatic turns. So getting back to the story, my mother passed away in August of 1989. I told my father about Marion in October that same year. And just like the Howzes who took everyone in and made them family, my father told me to invite Marion and whoever she wanted to bring with her to our home for Thanksgiving dinner. Classic Howze move. I told you that when I was growing up, I never knew what new sister or family member I'd come home to on any given day. even if it was only temporary. A lot of people came through our doors. So just as my father instructed, I invited Marion to Thanksgiving dinner, and she accepted. So on Thanksgiving Day, Marion and her youngest child, my little brother, came to the house that I grew up in, where before I moved to Philadelphia, I had been the whole time, growing up in plain sight, just an hour away. I remember that day vividly. I remember my nervousness and my excitement as I waited for Marion to arrive. I knew my Howze sisters would be fine and that my father would be fine. I mean, after all, they loved everyone, all the folks that came through our doors. But the only person I was concerned about was me. I didn't know how I would feel about having the woman who gave birth to me in the same house that my mother lived in and died in. Would it be a betrayal of her or her memory? Would I be dishonoring her in some way by having the one person she never even wanted me to know about come to her home, sit in her kitchen, eat off of her good china? You know, the dishes that you only pull out on the holidays. We all have that set of dishes, right? So to be honest, I wasn't entirely okay with it. And in fact, I felt a little guilty. But in the end, truth and wisdom prevailed, and the doors of my heart and my family home were opened to receive my birth mother and my brother. Now, to this day, my brother will tell you that when I opened the door to greet him and Marion on that Thanksgiving Day, he almost fainted. Keep in mind, this was his first time seeing me, his older sister, who until then, he didn't even know existed. So as soon as he was able to lift his drop jaw off the floor, my brother said, and I quote, "Oh my God, you look just like Mom." Now, I don't know if he had any doubts about me or my claim to be Marion's daughter, but if he did, well, those doubts were completely erased when he saw me. I was Marion's twin. Don't believe me? Just wait for the book to come out. You'll see the pictures. So part one of my Meet the Family tour went beautifully and without a hitch. Part two, the big one, was scheduled for the Saturday after Thanksgiving. That was the day I was going to meet Marion's family, her husband, her brothers and sisters, her nieces and nephews, and all their children, all like 900 people. Okay, maybe not that many, but it sure did feel that way. They were a huge family. Never in my life had I been around so many people related to each other, related to me. I saw myself in them, in the way they looked and the way they laughed, the way they walked, even the way they talked. I saw me in them. It was both eerie and beautiful at the same time. And it was a moment that has been forever etched in my memory. This long-awaited moment when the pieces of my life would start to come together like building a puzzle. I saw younger versions of me, older people with my face, my nose, my jawline, my bloodline. These people were my people, my family. And in that instant, the word family took on a whole new and broader meaning. Now, what was I supposed to do with all these people? I ask you, my friends, all these new aunties and uncles and cousins. Was I now supposed to start calling them by these titles? And was I now supposed to, add them to my holiday visits, to my birthdays, to my life? See, this, my friends, is what people mean when they say be careful what you ask for because what? You just might get it. I hear you all saying it. Because for most of my adult life, until I met Marion, I often wondered, and I would ask God, is there anyone out there who was like me, both in looks and in personality? I had no idea there would be so many of them. But I'm glad I wasn't careful, and I'm glad that I did ask for this, because as overwhelming as it was, this journey to truth, to finding my birth mother and meeting her huge family, meeting my 3 younger brothers, this enlarged my capacity to love in ways I hadn't known before. It enlarged my perspective of the world and what makes up a family, and it allowed me to witness in a major way the impact and the effect of DNA on who we become. It was amazing. This leg of my journey helped prepare me for what was yet to come many years later. But most importantly, this journey to truth led me to meet the one and only person on the planet who was fully and biologically related to me. Someone who had the same birth mother and the same biological father as I did. Well, I warned you to buckle up, because this ride is about to take the most dramatic turn of this amazing journey. I hope you'll stay with me. Until the next time, you shall know the truth, and the truth will make you free.
You have been listening to Secrets of the Church, Revealed to Heal, a production of Be Inspired Global Media. If you have been burdened with a church secret and want to be free and healed, please email us at mychurchsecret@gmail.com. You can also follow us on Twitter at ChurchSecrets1. Look for new episodes of Secrets of the Church every other Friday. And remember, you shall know the truth, and the truth will make you free.